35 years after he was found guilty in the murder of Austin Metcalf. This case has been on the radar of the nation for the last year since it occurred in April of 2025 at a track meet in Frisco, Texas. Well, this verdict has the people with many different feelings on both sides. Some are happy, and some feel like 35 years was just way too much time. So, we're going to talk about what went on with this trial. We're going to talk about his mom asking for mercy before the sentencing, talk about the feelings of the Metcalf family towards this 35-year sentence that Carmelo Anthony got. If you're not familiar, this case has been dominating the headlines for the last week or so once this case finally went to trial. It occurred in April 2025 when Austin Metcalf and Carmelo Anthony had a fateful meeting under a tent at a track meet. Normally, track meets are pretty run of the mill. They don't generally have this type of activity going on. For the most part, I don't even really generally hear about fights that happen at track meets. So, that type of sport usually doesn't have this kind of energy, but for whatever reason, that's the kind of energy that happened on this day. These two were under this tent together and they exchanged words, possibly exchanged physical altercation with each other. Austin put his hands on him, or Carmelo put his hands on Austin. I feel like the testimony from the teenagers is really unreliable, and we'll kind of talk about that. But we'll say, something happened, and it appears from what the kind of consensus is Austin had put his hands on Carmelo. Carmelo had his hands in his backpack, pretty much either said, touch me and find out. If you put your hands on me, whatever Austin did. And then he did what he did with what he brought with him to the track meet. Now, what I wanted the defense to kind of touch on that I really needed to understand what happened in that tent from the perspective of Carmelo that caused you to use a knife. What made you think that that type of response was necessary? And I just didn't feel like any of the testimony, even on the side when the defense had people that came up, really kind of gave and painted a picture of, did you truly feel that you were in so much danger that that response was warranted? And if that was the case, why did they not paint that picture? Because the jury needs to feel like you felt in that moment. They need to understand what was going on in your head. What were the circumstances that led to that? If your life depends on it, I would expect that you want to make sure that they can relate as much as possible, because there's nothing like saying, well, if you were in that situation, could you react the same way? Does this seem so far fetched? But if you don't paint that picture, it's going to seem very, very off for your response compared to what was allegedly going on in that tent. Now, I want to start off with saying it is very, very sad and unfortunate that Austin Metcalf lost his life. I don't think that he should have lost his life over somebody being in a tent that was from a different school. Honestly, it's very unfortunate that it was even addressed at all, because I think that both of their lives would not have been altered if it just would have been left alone and he just would have finished talking with his friend or whatever was going on. He left out of there and then the competition continued, but unfortunately, it didn't. But that doesn't mean that Austin should have lost his life. You should have been able to graduate. You should be able to go to college and continue and grow into an adult and have all the experiences that unfortunately was taken away from you. So I don't want to minimize it in any way, shape, or form. I don't think that he should have lost his life. He was a young man. It was probably a run of the mill kind of confrontation that you have with somebody. And I'm sure he was just as shocked as everybody in that tent when he was poked. And then all of a sudden, it was just, he wasn't going to survive. And that is just very unfortunate. And I'm sorry that your twin brother had to see and experience that. I couldn't even imagine. My heart goes out to your family. Now, with that, being said here, Carmelo Anthony is still entitled to a fair defense, and he is still entitled to a defense, whether or not you may think that this person is guilty. They do still need to go through the legal system and be found guilty, which is what occurred here. And I think the testimony from the teens and from the coaches that were there and from the video cams that showed the life-saving measures that were done for Austin Metcalf. And I understand that his family, was crying during that particular time and that particular testimony when they're seeing those videos. And I can only imagine what emotions that's invoking, especially because what ends up happening here in the end. And it's one of those things that I think was very touching to the jury, because that is emotion, human emotion. That's something we can relate to, especially if you are a parent. But it doesn't matter, just on a human to human level, you can relate to seeing, somebody. I understand you could see him on the video losing their life, and people who are trying to talk to him, keep him alive, doing everything they can to make sure that this person doesn't lose their life. Yeah, I can only imagine how emotional that has to be, especially when it's your child, your brother, your relative, your friends. But why Carmelo Anthony's defense wasn't trying to evoke the same emotion to give him some credibility to this self defense that he was trying to say was the reason why he was not guilty for what occurred. I just that's kind of escaping me. Let me know. Do you think that the defense didn't really put on anything that gave Carmelo a solid self-defense backing because there really wasn't one? Or do you think that his defense team failed him as far as putting on a solid defense to give him a fighting chance in this trial? Let me know what you think about that in the comments. Like to get your feedback on it. For me, I just don't think that they did a strong enough defense to really give him anything that was going to help the jury understand why he felt that self defense was the reasoning for why he did what he did. And why they didn't do that, I think, is for all of us to explore as more information comes out, because this trial was not televised. So you have to rely on the people who were in there and what they're sharing with us, because it's not something you can go back and watch for yourself and kind of take apart and make your own interpretation. So, as I see more lives from people who were in the courtroom, we'll kind of see if we can piece together what might have been missing. Let's get into this article from TMZ about for mercy during the sentencing. And this is the mom for Carmelo Hayes, or excuse me, for Carmelo Anthony, Kala Hayes. And she was on the stand to speak for the defense when they were going to go into the sentencing after he was found guilty. So let's get into this article from TMZ. Carmelo Anthony's mom took the stand to plead with the jury to set to determine her son's fate, TMZ has learned. And let's pause for a quick moment here. Noella, welcome, or Noelia, and Leland, welcome. Thank you so much for stopping by. Appreciate it. And then Paula Hayes testified minutes after her son was found guilty of murdering Austin Metcalf. She told the 12-person jury she knows her son is very sorry for what he did. And I believe that. This was his first offense. This young man did not grow up in a violent, hostile environment. It's not a normal behavior for him. That's not something that he typically did. They didn't have people testifying that he going around and popping off at these track meets. So it's not a common occurrence that happened for him, which leads me to believe there must have been something that happened that made him feel like he needed to do that, because it wasn't normal behavior for him. And nobody got up there and really displayed that he had a history of being violent for me to go, well, it probably took very little. So that's what leads me to believe there had to have been something about that. But why they did not really paint that picture so that everybody, including the jury, could truly understand from his perspective, that's up for debate and maybe grounds for appeal for the type of representation that he received. Let's get back into the story. Prosecutors asked Kala if she still had love for her son. Kala was asked, quote, regardless of what happens, you realize you will still get to be a part of your son's life. End quote. She replied, yes, I do. Carmelo's mom is the only witness to take the stand for the defense in the sentencing. Thus far, as TMZ previously reported, Carmelo is facing 5 to 99 years in state prison for murdering Austin at a Texas high school track meet in 2025. So they ended up settling on 35 years that he was sentenced. And in my opinion, that 35 years was to, I think, take away his life the way Austin won't get to have a life. Like if majority of his life is spent behind bars, it's kind of like giving that back to the Metcalf family in a way, because he's not going to have a life because your son is not alive. That's kind of the way I see it, but I don't think he intentionally went to hurt that young man. That would be very surprising to me if that was intentional, because that just, I didn't get that kind of energy that that's the kind of young man that he is. And that 35 years, I just feel like was definitely meant to send a lesson, and that was meant to be harsh on him, and it was meant to be, I think, a majority of his life. I don't think this is over yet by any means. I just saw something about there's going to be an appeal, so we're going to talk about that. But let's get into this 35-year sentence that he got. Let me know if you think that that's too harsh, just right, or not enough time. Not enough time. So let me know in the comments. Do you think 35 years that Carmelo Anthony was sentenced too harsh, just right, or not enough time? Want to see what you think? Let's get into this article from TMZ. Carmelo Anthony will spend 35 years behind bars for murdering Austin Metcalf, a judge has ruled. On Tuesday, the jury found the Texas teen guilty for murdering Austin at a high school track meet last April. The death penalty was off the table because Carmelo was a minor. The jury rejected Anthony's claim he acted under, quote, sudden passion, end quote, in the fatal stabbing. Anthony will be required to serve at least half of the sentence before he can be considered for parole. So he'll have to do about 17 years before he can potentially get parole. And I understand he's 19 now. So if that's the case, I believe that'll be 36 when he may potentially get parole. And you don't even know if that's going to happen then. And that's if he ends up having to keep this 35-year sentence, because I have every confidence there will be appeals coming. Let's get back into the story. Moments before the jury delivered the sentence, Carmelo Anthony was in the courtroom and his head was down and he appeared to be sobbing. And I'm sure he's still a 19-year-old teen. He's never been in trouble with the law. This is a high profile murder case. You got people from all over the world watching this, probably sending him letters. It's got a lot of attention. You know, you go from being a nobody, so to speak. You just go from being a normal person living your everyday life to now you are a headline. Every move you make, everything you do, your family is now being scrutinized. I'm sure that's a lot to take in. I'm not saying that this hadn't had anything to do with his own actions, but I'm sure that's a lot to process as a 19-year-old. And then you just find out you are sentenced, you know, you're found guilty for murder, and now you're being sentenced to 35 years in prison. And you've never been a violent person, never been in that life before. So you're about to be in there with the big boys, with some hard criminals who are about that life. And you are a young, tiny man compared to what you're going to be going into prison with. Yeah, I'd be crying too. I'm crying for you because I can only imagine. I could only imagine. No, thank you on the men's prison. No thanks. Let's get back into the story here. The defense reportedly only called one witness during the punishment phase of the trial. Carmelo's mom, Kayla Hayes, according to Fox 4, she begged the court for mercy, saying she knows her son and he's very sorry for what he did. Now, why do you think dad didn't go up there? I would want both my parents to go. Well, really, I'd want more family members than that, but I think his sister's a minor, so I wouldn't expect her to get up there. But I don't know why the dad didn't get up there and speak, or if this was strategic to just have one go up there. I'm not sure. Let me know. Would you want both mom and dad to go up there? And I guess any adult, you know, siblings or other adults in your family that can go up and vouch for your character. Because I just feel like one person, they thought that was going to sway the jury. Why just one person you send up there? I don't know. Let's get back into the story. When prosecutors cross examined Kayla, they asked if she still loved her son, and she said yes. The prosecution asked, quote, regardless of what happens, you realize you will still be part of your he will still be part of your life. And quote, she responded yes again. As you know, the boys fought under a tent during the track meet, which is when Carmelo stabbed Austin in the chest. He passed from those injuries. Carmelo's defense had argued the stabbing was in self defense, claiming in closing arguments that the victim had been using quote, deadly force, end quote, to try and remove Carmelo from the tent. However, the jury didn't agree and found Carmelo guilty. All right, we're going to pause for a moment here. We got a comment. Bond, bond servants. He had no others for good character witness. They should say something. Oh, that should say something. Excuse me. Um, he was only pushed. I don't know about if there were no others for good character witnesses. I would imagine his dad could be a character witness for being a good character. And I don't know if his family lives in Texas or if they are the only ones of their family that live in Texas or not. So I'm not sure about if he didn't have any other witnesses for that or if it was strategic for one. I would be liking to know what was in the mind of this attorney in general for him for this defense because I have a lot of questions about things that weren't said or done in there. So I'm not going to go that far because sometimes things happen in the court intentionally, maybe not for lack of people that could be there. He was only pushed allegedly. I think that the teens, it's gonna be hard for me. Their teens testimony, I wouldn't put a whole bunch of money. I wouldn't go bet a whole lot of money on that because these are young kids who saw a traumatic situation that does not usually happen. And I don't know much about Frisco, Texas, but I was getting the energy that that's not a common occurrence there. So I'm sure they're not used to seeing that. So you have this really traumatic event that's happening at something that nobody's expecting it to happen at. So that's a lot to process when you're young and you are not used to that type of stuff. And then somebody passes away. That's a lot. And then you're going to be, you have a whole year, more than a year, because this happened in April of 2025, that you're rethinking events. You got a lot of different information, stuff that's happened since that occurred. That's going to be playing around in your head, and you're going to see things differently than how it actually happened. Of course, a year later and after Austin passed away, what he did is probably going to seem minor because he didn't deserve to lose his life for it. And I won't disagree on that. I could tell you if my child just told someone to get out of a tent and pushed them, however hard or soft that may have been, I would not be expecting to get a call that my child's life was lost. So, in that sense, I do totally um, feel for them because I think it was a little bit much. Should he have touched him at all? He shouldn't have touched him at all. Both people should have kept their hands to themselves. You want to exchange words? That's one thing. Should you be touching anybody because they were in what you perceive as your space that they shouldn't be in? I'm going to tell you guys, as a good rule of thumb, don't ever put your hands on nobody because you don't know what they got going on up here or what they might have. Don't ever put your hands on nobody. Now they're putting their hands on you and you have to get them off of you. Do what you got to do. But if you are initiating it on somebody you don't know, be smart. You don't know what's going on up in somebody's head and you don't know what they got. It's not worth it. Again, if they're attacking you, do what you need to do. But if you are not being attacked, don't go up and touch people. That's the rule I go by. I don't do it. I don't do it. Let's get into these comments here real quick. We're gonna pause. He was asked to leave like 15 times, didn't leave, and then made threats with his hand on the 5-inch blade in his backpack. I don't know about if he was asked to leave 15 times, because again, I'm not going to rely on testimony from teenagers that were in a traumatic situation that's over a year later. He was asked to leave. I think we can all agree on that. The amount of times, I'm not going to go by that. Schmello in jail from, what is this, Recondolese? Okay. Christopher Cole, welcome. Um, let's see. Cramptha, Anthony family sold Carmelo as a slave to prison for money. Okay, bye with that nonsense. Don't drop the soap. So original. And let's see. And keep your hands off of people. You shouldn't touch people in general. People you don't know. You don't know what anybody's got going on mentally, and I stand on that. Don't touch people. Don't do it. I don't do it. You don't do it, and we'll call it a day. Everybody respect everybody. That's kind of like what you learn as kids. Don't touch people. Don't put your hands on people. That's what I learned in school. That's what I learned from my parents at a young age. I don't know if they stopped teaching that, but we need to get back to it. And now we're going to move on here. So this is new mug shot here. And he's going to be a different young man when he comes out in 17 years. If this sentence sticks, he's going to be very different. I can only imagine the life that you're going to lead in prison and what that whole world is going to be like. It's completely different than what his life is going to be like on the outside. And he's going to have a very long time to sit and live with the choices that he made. That split second decision changed his whole life, took somebody's life, changed families, changed his own family. And it's just very unfortunate that it's just very unfortunate that this situation happened, and it's just one that I hope people all take something from. It's never that serious to take someone's life over something like that. If we can't square up, as they used to say, if you can't fight them one on one, I don't know why you need to kind of go to that extreme. Because, and it's the same way I feel about Rick Chow with this Cyrus Carmack Belton case. This child had already left your store and you followed them out. Like at some point, we have to know when we need to step away and let it go. And I don't know why we don't practice de escalation. I just, for this to get to this level and somebody not to be here over, you need to leave my tent is crazy to me. So let's get back into what the Metcalf family had to say about this 35-year sentence that he was served. So this is mom. I believe her name is Megan. And his father also had some comments at the sentencing that I want to get into here. And the father, they were trying to say, had some kind of connection with the judge here prior to the trial actually starting. But dad said that that was not the case here. So we'll get into that after. Here we go. So this is the article from TMZ. Austin Metcalf's dad goes ballistic on Carmelo Anthony. So he had some comments for him during this sentencing. This article from TMZ, Austin Metcalf's father torn to convicted killer Carmelo Anthony, making it clear he was full of equal parts rage and sadness over his teenage son's murder. Yelling while slamming his fists into the podium during the victim impact statements, Jeff Metcalf said a part of him was killed when his 17-year-old son was stabbed to death by Anthony, and he demanded the 19-year-old look at him in the eye, according to WFAA. I think that's must be like a TV station. Metcalf reportedly shouted, quote, "We were robbed. Don't look down. You can't look me in my eyes, but you can stab my effing son. You don't belong in this community," Jeff said, or end quote. Jeff also said the case was not about race, despite narratives. It was about right and wrong. And he's been pretty consistent with that message. And I do appreciate him keeping it on what it's about. According to the outlet, Megan Metcalf, Austin's mother, also addressed Anthony, telling him he was lucky he only got 35 years behind bars because the family has a life sentence of Austin never coming back. A Texas jury found Anthony guilty of murder following 4 days of testimony in which Carmelo's attorney failed to convince the jurors his client acted in self defense. Anthony will be transferred to the Texas Department of Criminal Justice, where he will serve out his sentence. And let's see what they were talking about with an appeal. Okay. So it says, "I'm not done fighting yet," appeals 35-year sentence. This article from TMZ. Carmelo isn't done fighting his Murder case just yet because we've learned he's planning to appeal after being convicted for murdering Austin Metcalf. According to court records obtained by TMZ, Anthony filed a notice of appeal. The move comes less than 24 hours after a Texas jury found him guilty of murder, and he was subsequently sentenced to 35 years behind bars. Let's take a little pause here. Mutual, what is this? User in our mutual combat is a thing. Um, don't don't stab people. Yes, hands deserve hands. That's self-defense. Mutual combat is a thing. Okay, let's see. And fighting and physical. This is Caden Huntsman 3114. Fighting and physical altercation is normal for children and young adults. It happens. Fighting happens. However, been involved in fights myself and never killed someone. Yeah, I think most people can say that they've been in fights and it doesn't end up taking someone's life, which is why this one was so shocking because it shouldn't have gone to that level at all. There's no reason why I should know the city of Frisco, Texas, anything about this track meet or those two young men's names because it just shouldn't have gone to this level. It's very unfortunate. There are no winners in this case at all. There are no winners. What is this? His parents got 800,000 and didn't get their son a lawyer. Are you referring to Carmelo Anthony? Is that what you're saying, that his family didn't get him a lawyer? Let me know. And now we're going to get back into this appeal that was filed here. Let's see if it has any information on what grounds that they're basing this appeal on. Yes, for Carmelo Anthony's family. Well, who's defending him then? Are you saying that that's a public defender that he has and not a private attorney that was defending him? And as you come in, let me know if you think that the 35-year sentence that Carmelo Anthony got was too harsh, just right, or not enough time. Let me know in the comments. I'm going to jump back into this appeal. Carmelo's lawyer, Mike Howard, tells TMZ, quote, after the conclusion of the trial yesterday, we gave the court our official notice that Carmelo Anthony's filing an appeal. We believe there are several important issues for the appellate courts to consider. An appeal is the next part of the legal process and a right afforded every American, end quote. Now, it is typical for appeals to be filed. This is not something new or unique or special in Carmelo Anthony's case. People do it all the time, and I think you should do it. I think it would be a little weird if you just let it stand. It is your right to do that, so that doesn't necessarily mean anything, but we'll see what comes from it. If they do find that there were some things that may have caused the outcome of the trial to be a certain way, that if it wasn't that way, it may have impacted it. Let's get back into this. As we previously reported, jurors rejected Anthony's self-defense argument and returned a guilty verdict Tuesday, following days of emotional testimony and closing arguments. He was then sentenced to 35 years in prison, the case drawing national attention from the moment of his arrest. The appeal marks the latest development in the whirlwind for Anthony. We've reported he's currently being held in isolation, okay, while officials determine his long-term placement. Ooh, I could not imagine being 19, having to be in prison, a whole world I'm not even accustomed to, and then you got to be in isolation while you're there. His mental is, oh, I could not even imagine. Let's see. Meanwhile, support for him hasn't dried up despite the convictions. Okay. Donations have continued pouring in from supporters. His family's gearing up for a lengthy appeals fight, I'm sure. And even Cardi B has entered the conversation, sounding off on social media after the guilty verdict was handed down. Okay, so now Cardi B is jumping in on it. You said not a dollar went. His parents got 800,000. Not a dollar went to his defense peers, is according to Bad A Bondi. Okay, I don't know that that is true. You can't claim self-defense. Hold on. This is the Mainer. You can't claim self-defense when you tell the threat, make me move 10 times. He wasn't scared, and that's why there was no self-defense. He was escalating at that point? I don't know. I don't know why you'd want to escalate when you're outnumbered in a tent that's for another school and you're the only one that's from a different school. That just is counterintuitive to me to say I want to be in a tent full of other people. Ooh, gonna get into this that you're gonna be in a tent full of other people from a different school, and that's when you decide you want to cause problems at a random track meet. I don't know, but it could be because I don't think like that. Why didn't he leave? My name is not Carmelo Anthony, so I cannot tell you what was going on in his head in April of 2025. So you're asking the wrong one, but I'm sure they take letters in prison, so you could write him and see if he'll tell you because he didn't get up there and speak. So any answer I give is purely speculation, not actually anything he said, not actually anything we know for a fact. I don't know why he didn't leave. I really and truly don't know why he did not leave. There's nothing I can answer to that. Um, I don't know what was really truly happening in that particular instance. I don't know if it was so quick of you need to leave and then he couldn't react because then they put his hands on him and then that happened. I don't know. I wasn't in there. But unfortunately, it didn't go down that way. He didn't leave. And we know what happened next. So we can only deal with where we are and not why it didn't go another way. Let's go into this. It says crowdfunding page pulled after Schmurder conviction. Now, I was just reading that he was still getting money. So let's check this out. This is from TMZ. A Carmelo Anthony crowdfunding page that has raised more than $630,000 has been yanked a day after the 19-year-old was convicted of murdering Austin Metcalf. A rep for Give, Send, Go tells TMZ the page created by Carmelo's mom was allowed because everyone is presumed innocent until proven guilty. But after his conviction, things changed. Okay, so the funds, which climbed over 633,000 as of Wednesday morning, were intended for legal defense and family relocation. Carmelo was initially held on $1 million bond, but it was reduced to 250,000. He was released on house arrest with an ankle monitor to await his trial, which wrapped Tuesday with his conviction and 35-year prison sentence. The Give Send Go rep also said, quote, "Our prayer is for Austin Metcalf's family and for all those affected and for justice, mercy, and peace in our community," end quote. So I don't know what happens to that money that was already in there. I don't know if they dispersed that to them or what, because it does not say. But it looks like they won't be able to continue to raise money on that particular platform due to that conviction. So we'll see how that goes. I have no doubt that this story will continue to have more twists and turns and more things that come out. And you will get those updates here on Aries Rose TV. We'll be back later on for WTF for They Thinking Wednesdays. We're going to talk a little lighter subject than this one. This one was dark and sad, and we want to get on to a little bit happier topics here. If you have not already done so, we'd love to have you part of the Aries crew. Hit that subscription button and hit that notification bell so you can find out every time we go live, post videos, updates, all that good stuff. Thank you so much for watching. We'll see you later on. Have a great rest of your day and take care.